Hey, welcome into Strictly Speaking. Vivek Ramaswamy is a biotech entrepreneur by trade, but you know him best as a former 2024 presidential candidate. Maybe you know him as a co-leader of the Federal Department of Government Efficiency, but now you know him as the Donald Trump-endorsed Republican candidate for governor of the Buckeye State, his home state of Ohio, and mine too. And today he's going to tell us all about his vision for the future of Ohio and for Vivek Ramaswamy right here on Strictly Speaking. This episode of Strictly Speaking with Bob Frantz is brought to you by Get More Tank. What is it? Get More Tank is a fuel catalyst that's going to save you money every single month on gas. Get More Tank is a tablet with active ingredients that add big mileage to every tank. Made in America, the Get More Tank formula has been used for decades by trucking companies and heavy industry. Now the Get More Tank formula is available to people like you and me. Get More Tank works in any gas or diesel engine, cleans your engine, lowers emissions, and you'll feel improved engine performance every time you step on the gas. Get More Tank works for cars, trucks, boats, motorcycles, four-wheelers, mowers, and blowers, contractors, electricians, plumbers, painters, lawn service companies. Get More Tank is going to save you money and extend the life of your engines. If you're an owner-operator running your rig around town or across the country, Get More Tank is going to save you money too. A 5-pack on sale only at getmoretank.com for just $22 plus shipping. Use promo code Bob and get 10% off of that. Save your money and get better engine performance at getmoretank.com. That's getmoretank.com. Vivek, so good to see you and talk to you again. How are you, sir?
Doing well, my man. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to talk to you here. So we're going to dive right in because our time is limited and yours is very limited. My goodness, what a schedule you keep these days. Now, clearly you have a passion to serve and you feel like you have a lot to offer. Otherwise, you wouldn't run for president. And some of your supporters thought you'd make a great senator to replace J.D. Vance. So my question is, why governor and why right now, Vivek?
Yeah, look, in my capacity running for U.S. president, one of the things I learned, Bob, is a lot of the issues that I was most focused on in my presidential run. Take our educational achievement crisis, for example. That's actually best addressed in this next phase by actually leaders of states, by governors. By my nature, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not one of 100. I'm not one of 400 in the Congress or the Senate, though those are important positions. I think I'm at my best when I'm leading from the front. I think that's what Ohio needs right now is a strong chief executive who drives an agenda for this state. And I really mean this when I say this, Bob, is I'm guided by gratitude, actually. My parents came to Cincinnati, Ohio 45 years ago with no money. In a single generation, I've gone on to found successful companies. I became the youngest person in history to run for U.S. president as a Republican. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, who's lived her version of the American dream. She's a throat surgeon, one of the most successful in the country, right here at Ohio State. We're grateful to this country and to this state, in my case, for giving me the opportunities that I've had. I'm raising my two boys here. They're 5 and 2. And I want my kids and I want every kid in this state to have the same shot at the American dream that we did. And I think I'm going to be able to actually accomplish that as a governor that, frankly, we're in a conservative state. Ohio is a conservative state. If we're fully governed like one, I think that's actually going to lead us to the next level. And that won't lose us elections. It will win us elections. And that's my philosophy in running here.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like the the acknowledgement of we're a Republican state for sure. I don't know that there's enough conservatism within the Republican supermajorities in Columbus, but I agree with you. We are a conservative state. We're becoming more that way, and we need a
I'm talking about our
governor.
electorate. I'm talking about our electorate, not necessarily the
I
Columbus
know.
crowd,
Well,
but
I
I'm
know,
talking
but
about our
they
electorate
represent
for a
the electorate.
conservative state.
But
We're a
those folks
conservative state in
represent
our
our electorate.
values.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree 100%. And the electorate deserves to have people as conservative as they are in the
Yes.
state house, the Senate, and in the governor's mansion. I concur 100%. So from a lot of your interviews and even some of the early campaign commercials, Vivek, it seems like you believe that manufacturing and industry are going to be the top priorities for Ohioans going forward, and making Ohio the destination state for people who are leaving blue states, high tax states, and so forth, to make Ohio that place. Tell us about that vision.
Absolutely. I want Ohio to be a haven for our country, setting a national standard of what America was built on. Right? Ohio was the state that led the first industrial revolution. At the turn of the last century, we were arguably the wealthiest state in the Union. And even in the 1950s, 6 of the top 15 wealthiest cities were right here in Ohio. Toledo for glass, Akron, leader for rubber, Youngstown, Cleveland in steel, Dayton in computing power. My hometown of Cincinnati was a consumer products capital of the West, known around the world as the Queen City. See, that was Ohio. That's the character of this state. The state of Neil Armstrong, John Glenn, reaching the outer frontiers of outer space when that was deemed impossible. Take even the state of the Wright brothers, taking flight when that was deemed impossible. That's our heritage, right? I think we're the state of excellence in America. It's who we've been for most of our history. And I think we can be that state again, because if you think about it, Bob, we have every advantage we did the first time around, and then some more. The same fertile farmland, the same natural resources, including not just oil, but natural gas right underneath our ground, a great geographic position, Erie Canal to New York City, Ohio River to the Mississippi, and 60% of North America's population within a single day's drive of where I'm sitting in central Ohio right now. That's a great opportunity. I think God has blessed our state with every gift we could wish for. I should say every natural gift we should wish for to be the state that leads America back to greatness. All we have to do is to believe in ourselves and have leadership at the level of the human beings who lead this state to actually be ambitious enough to lead us there. And I am ambitious about that. If Silicon Valley led the way for the last 10 years, I want to make sure it's the Ohio River Valley for the next 10 years. I'm not talking about the Rust Belt. I'm talking about our future, the Platinum Belt, as I call it. It may not be exactly the same sectors as the last time around. It may not be rubber exactly, but it's going to be the sectors of the future. It's going to be advanced manufacturing, a boom of the manufacturing of the future right here in Ohio. Programming in Silicon Valley, that's fine. It's production here in Ohio, and not just yesterday's industrialization, but tomorrow's industrialization. And to do it, we need to turn Ohio into what I call kind of a special economic zone at the heart of the heartland, at the heart of the country. Zero income tax state, slash and burn the regulatory state that gets in the way, get rid of the red tape, government overreach, bureaucracy, barriers to industry, to become a magnet. And yes, some of this is catch up with Texas and Florida and Tennessee, but pretty soon after we've played catch up, we're going to be leading from the front. And by the time I'm done as governor, I wouldn't have done my job if Texas and Florida and Tennessee aren't following our lead rather than the other way around. And I think now's the moment for that. And I do think there are some things we're going to have to address. I'm not just pie in the sky here, Bob. Let's talk about the challenges. We got a population decline issue that we're going to have to turn around. We have a looming electricity shortage, which we're going to have to address. We have an educational achievement crisis, not just in Ohio, but across the country. Those are three of the core issues I'm focused on. But if we address those core issues and more, then I believe we're going to have an economic boom in this state of a kind that we have not seen since the first industrial revolution. That's where I'm leading us.
Yeah, that's a lot of aspirational stuff and a lot of ambition, which we should be driven by. I agree. We should be driven by aspiration and ambition. And I think all of those things are possible. It's a long game, though. So we need to talk, let's talk short and long term.
Sure.
You mentioned part of what you just said a moment ago was about eventually getting down to a zero state income tax. I talked with Governor DeWine on Wednesday, and he told me that, and I mentioned you and this, and he said he would not get into a fight with you on this, but he doesn't see where the replacement revenue would come from to provide for all of the state's essential services and needs and so forth. We talked about Florida and Texas and how they do it, but he doesn't see, at least in the conversation I had, the pathway to replacing all of that lost revenue from income tax. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is, first of all, I'm going to do nothing but build on the good accomplishments of those who came before me. I don't have criticism for the people who came before me. I have praise for them. And I'm going to pick the best of their accomplishments and build on that foundation to lead Ohio to the next level. And so to give Governor DeWine credit, I'm not saying I want us to be one of the better states in the Midwest, because we are already one of the better states in the Midwest. And I give great credit to a great state legislature and the accomplishments of those who came before me. So nothing I'm saying about the future is to take away from the accomplishments of the past. But that being said, where I want to lead us is to be the best state in the country on raising a family, generating wealth, keeping that wealth, really becoming the leader and setting a national standard for educational achievement and economic achievement. So it's a positive ambition without necessarily, offering any criticism of the past. That being said, let me address the question. I believe the state that put a man on the moon, and by the way, for those who forget, that's us. That's Ohio, the state of Neil Armstrong. We put a man on the moon. We sent the first American into orbit in outer space. Getting to zero income tax will not be the greatest feat this state has ever accomplished. Greater feats have been accomplished in human history, even in Ohio. There's a pragmatic path to get us there. We've got some great state legislators, I should recognize, who came before me already now have great paths to stair-stepping us down to zero income tax. Zero capital gains tax is one of the steps to get us to zero income tax. That's a really important step, if you think about it, Bob, because that attracts entrepreneurs and capital owners
Sure.
into our state. And then what do those capital owners do when they divest an asset sitting on large capital gains? That's why people move to Texas or Florida or Tennessee. They have liquidity, they spend that money. That's more volume going through the economic transactions, which increases sales tax revenue even without increasing sales tax rates. So the number one driver is actually going to be increased economic activity in our state by making our state a magnet for people moving into our state. And a zero capital gains tax immediately straight out the gate is one of those things that helps put us and accelerate our path to a zero income tax. There are also some other revenue sources I have in mind that are not going to come from raising tax rates, but increasing economic activity of a kind that we don't currently have in our state. I'll have more to say about that over the course of this year. And if you combine that with improving effectiveness in the administration of the state in certain other domains, we can go through specific examples, but on the campaign trail, I've talked about improving the effectiveness of our universities by consolidating some of the excess universities we have in our university system, attaching work requirements and other conditions to certain forms of government aid that really aren't helping the people who are on them if they're on them permanently. We can talk about some of the areas where we could think about improving effectiveness. Reducing cost will be a byproduct of that as well. And the combination of those three things. So number one is added economic growth that drives more revenue through the existing sales tax rates as they exist. Combine that with actually drawing more people into our state and bringing in some added sources of revenue through new kinds of economic activity that I'll talk about later this year. And then combine that with improving effectiveness, but the byproduct of which is reducing some of the cost and overspending. We have a glide path to a zero income tax rate if we're really willing to make that a goal. And I am. And I do think that that's going to allow Ohio to be the place where people move rather than Texas or Tennessee or Florida. Frankly, we all have neighbors who go sit 6 months in a day in Florida. We're missing out on their sales tax revenue when they should be here in the meantime because other states are arbitraging Ohio. So I want to put an end to that. I want to see us lead. And that leads to the number one problem that I think we do need to address that very few are talking about, which is that we have a declining population in our state, Bob. And that's just a fact we have to confront. We're going to turn that around. I'm not blaming anybody who came before, but it's a hard fact. We have a declining population for two reasons. Number one is people in my generation, millennials and Gen X, we're having fewer children.
Yep.
And the death rate's going up with an aging population. So that's what you call natural decline in population. But number two is we have more people moving out of our state than moving in. Okay, so Florida's number one on that metric. Texas is number two. Ohio is number 38. And I don't think that that number 38 is a coincidence. It's approximately what we are. We're about number 37 on state tax friendliness. So we're number 37 on state tax friendliness. We're number 38 in people moving in versus moving out. The two states that are most state tax friendly, Florida and Texas, are number one and number two. That's not an accident, Bob. So people follow incentives. That's just the American way. It's human nature. I think we got to lean into that rather than hide from it. And one of the things I'm going to do in this state is to drive a population boom of patriots across this state who share our values actually moving to Ohio. That includes repatriating our kids, repatriating our grandkids, many of whom have left the state, bring them back closer to their roots so they can pursue their American dream right here. And the last point I would make is look at the composition of who's leaving our state versus moving in. The people moving out tend to be younger, college-educated people. The people moving in tend to be on government aid, which I think the Medicaid expansion in part created an incentive for in this state. So you look at this, I'm just giving you objective hard facts. I don't want us to be number 38. I want us to be number one. I don't want us to be number 37 on tax friendliness. I want to be number one. And those actually help relate to one another. As if you're number one on tax friendliness, then you're no longer number 38 for people moving out. You're going to be number one on that list as well. That's the way I want to lead our state to the next level, not just to be one of the better in our region, but to be the best in the country. That's at least what we aspire to. And I think we can get there.
There's some consistency there on those numbers, 37th and 38th, because I think we're 37th in education as well, as far as proficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I I'm not here to curse the darkness. Okay. And I'm certainly not here to offer criticism of others. I think many of our state legislators are some of the best that we have in the country. Some of our state legislators, I've gotten to know them individually. They're there with the entrepreneurial energy. The way I want to run our state is just a little different, maybe, as we think about the future. Is the way I want to run our state is I want to be a governor who sets an agenda, who works with the leadership of the House and the Senate. We get in a room where there's no surprises, right? We have the agenda hammered out. And then we go to the membership of the House and the Senate to be able to say, are you ratifying the agenda or not? Not by having a bunch of great entrepreneurs, I would call them legislative entrepreneurs, who have these great ideas that they're pushing through the House and the Senate. They have no idea whether it's going to be signed into law or not, and they're guessing at every step of the way. That's not the way I want to do things. I want to set the agenda. That's my job as the next governor of the state. We will set that agenda. I'm going to work constructively with the leadership of both the House and the Senate on the front end to make sure we're aligned with that. We get that ratified and we go. That's the way I think we're going to get things done in Ohio. Same thing with respect to the other statewide elected officials. Right now, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Auditor, the Treasurer, we're not going to operate in separate silos anymore, where it's our teams that schedule a meeting that might happen 2 months out in time. No, it doesn't work that way. Already with these people, I'm on a direct text message thread with each of them. Real-time work as a team. It's the way you run a business. I think it's the way you got to run the state. One team mentality, get on the same page, hash it out, and then ratify it through the legislature. I think the state, it's time for a strong governor in this state who drives the agenda. I'm going to build on the foundation of the great accomplishments that came before me, give incredible credit to Governor DeWine and everybody else. Think about SB1 we got passed, great credit there. A lot of the economic development in the central part of the state, I'll applaud. I just want to build on that foundation, though, to really chase greatness for Ohio. And I want to build on those past accomplishments to go further. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and that's all. Those are all very good goals and very good points all the way through. I hate to spend all of our time on taxes, but I need to, because you talk about that stairway to zero income tax.
Yeah.
I don't know how steep that is or how shallow it is, because it's going to take a while. But what is very pressing right now is the property tax issue.
Yes.
And I want to get your thoughts on this too. I've talked to some people. I think I've even talked about this very briefly with you about perhaps finding a way to eliminate property tax. But for now, how about just lowering it? This massive revaluation of properties that we just had, which is required by law, has led to a huge spike in real estate taxes that seniors on fixed incomes cannot pay. There are going to be people being forced out of their homes. Again, referring back to my conversation with the current governor, he said, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'm open to ideas on ways we can do this. But he said, don't forget, those property taxes fund our schools. So we need to make sure that our schools are funded. So I didn't really like that answer. And as we are looking for new ideas, it comes with new leadership. How would you tackle that?
Well, I do have some ideas, Bob, and I'm open to others as well, but I'm going to give you the ones that we're going to start with in driving this forward. All right. Number one on that list is, I think we need to just give people a sense that this isn't going to be a permanent spiral, right? Because that's going to scare people. It already is. I travel the state. Look at a lot of farmers who don't necessarily have liquidity. Many people, not just farmers, but other landowners too, are paying as much in their property taxes right now as they are on the principal repayment and sometimes principal plus interest on their mortgage. That's not right. It makes it feel a lot like the land that you own is really just a lease from the government. And I think that's un-American. I think it's antithetical to our values protective of private property rights right here in Ohio. It's not who we are. And so we do need some changes, but I think we got to be very practical about the changes we're able to make. I'd like to offer two that I think are totally uncontroversial. Number one is, let's just pick a ceiling to say that the rate rise, okay, because that's part of the problem in this, is it's not just the valuation rise, it's the rate rise that sometimes gets voted for in the ballots. Let's put a statewide ceiling on it. And I don't often like to copy California, but I'll take good ideas from wherever they come. I think it was under Reagan, if I'm not mistaken, under Reagan's tenure as governor of California, they had a statewide ceiling to say that we're not increasing property taxes, the rate, by any more. If California hadn't done that, I think this might have been back in the 70s, boy, what would the Communist Republic of California be doing today, right? They would be in trouble. The state would be even worse shape than it is now. Well, I think we can get ahead of that in Ohio to say, and it can even be a relatively higher number, but just to say, here's the ceiling, okay? There are some counties who will operate at the ceiling. Some may be more competitive and say they operate at lower levels. And that's fine. That's competition and that's tailoring to local communities. But there's at least one ceiling where we say enough is enough. This is the statewide ceiling in Ohio. We're not going to have property taxes exceed a certain percentage in our state. And then you combine that with just a procedural reform. And I think this one's actually really important, Bob. It's the easiest win, and yet it gets to the essence of the issue. A lot of people don't know what they're voting for when they're improving or increasing that rate of property tax. They just don't know what it's for. And the reason why is the ballot language is super confusing. I mean, I have advanced degrees, okay? And I will tell you, it's confusing to me. It's confusing to most people who'd read it. 20 mil floor this, millage. Nobody knows what millage is, okay? So we're going to require transparency at the ballot box. If you're going to increase the property tax, we're going to have a table in $200,000 increments. If your home is $200,000, here's how much more you are going to pay next year. So there's no surprises when that property tax bill shows up. So am I saying this is an end-all be-all solution to the whole problem? No. But I think at this point, we need more than just political talking points and lip service to the problem. Those are two tangible solutions that at least will stem the bleeding on this issue, and then we'll build on that foundation to go further as we need to, because this is a focus for me. It's a focus for me in part because this is what I hear across the state. And I want to govern from a bubble in Columbus. It's not the kind of governor I'm going to be. I'm visiting all 88 counties this year. I'm going to visit all 88 counties next year. I'm going to visit all 88 counties, hopefully every one of the 8 years that I'm governor, because I want to listen to Ohioans. I want to work with every person in this state. Frankly, that includes Republicans and Democrats equally in terms of listening. We had an event in Warren County last night where in the room, we had apparently a twofold sellout crowd relative to any time in history of Warren County Lincoln Day dinners, which I was honored by. But there were also probably something that doesn't usually happen at Warren County Lincoln Day dinners was there was a large group of protesters outside. And, I think the team sort of advised me, shepherd on in, get in. And I don't fault them for giving me that political advice, but I actually went outside. We spent about half an hour. I talked individually to as many of those protesters as we could in a civil manner, not compromising on our principles, but listening to them. And honestly, I think that's half the battle of leading is just listen to the people you're leading. And to me, that's not just the Republican Party of Ohio. We're going to bring down property taxes for the Democrats too, and the independents. And they're all going to pay a zero income tax, and they're all going to pay a zero capital gains tax. And that will hopefully put money in the pockets of their kids, regardless of whether they're on the red team or blue team, they're on Team Ohio. That's the kind of culture I want to create in this state, a kind of a one Ohio culture, whether it's the way I deal with the legislature. It's not, we're at arm's length and guessing what each other is going to do. We're going to be working together on the front end. It's not with other statewide elected officials in a competitive or quasi-competitive environment. The AG, the auditor, the Secretary of State, the treasurer, all of us were working together as one team. And then with our electorate, frankly, we have a primary process. I expect to be the Republican nominee, and I expect to win the general decisively. But even the people who voted for the person who I defeat in that general election, we're going to listen to you too, because I think our policies are going to make your life better. And I hope by the time I'm reelected, whatever the margin is the first time, I want to win by an even bigger margin. That's what true success actually looks like, is delivering for the entire state.
All right. I'm really glad to hear you talking about those two, because that was going to be my last question for you anyway. I heard you say in a previous interview that you're going to have to achieve this industrial revolution and educational revitalization over 2 terms. Now, I'm no math major, but 2 terms would require you to be reelected in 2030, which would be 2 years after 2028. And as a former presidential candidate, are you saying you're not going to be running for president again in 2028?
I got to serve a full term at least, Bob. And I think that to get the agenda achieved, we've got to probably require, my vision for Ohio is ambitious, and as much and as fast as we're going to go. If we got it done in 1 term, that's great. I'd be satisfied with that. But I think to go the full distance, I think it's going to be 2 terms in the state. That's what our family's in this for. It's what we're prepared for. And you think about reversing that population decline problem. We'll see the early trends in the first 4 years, but I want to really break through over the course of 8 years to be a state that's driving an industrial boom, a population boom, educational achievement. I want to set a national standard. And we'll see the early trends in those first few years, and that even those first 4 years. But to really show what a reversal of educational achievement in our state and in our country looks like, to set a national model with that, I think we're going to need a little bit of time. And so don't worry, that doesn't mean we're not going to rush. We're going to go fast, straight out the gate. It's one of the things that I've learned is that time is your scarcest asset. I want to come in with a running start. Frankly, we don't have a competitive primary that's unique here. I think the general election, we're going to be, hopefully, if we stay the course, going to be in good shape. I want to already start the process of setting a governing agenda that allows us to sprint right out the gate. But it's not just the short term. We're in this for the long haul as well. And one of the things we didn't talk about today, but is super important for our state. And I really want to plant a stake in the ground on this, Bob. This is super important.
Okay.
Disappointingly, nobody's paying attention to this. Is one of the things I worry about, right? I'm giving you all the ambitious, positive vision, and I believe in it. But I also got to give you where I see some of the cautionary notes is I worry about an electricity crisis in this state. I mean, I worry about that looming electricity shortage in our state playing out in the next 4 to 5 years. It's not going to happen right now. It's going to happen on my watch as the governor unless we do something about it starting now. I'll tell you what the problem is on one hand, we've got a demand surge with AI data centers moving to our state. That part's good, but that's more demand on our electric grid than we've ever seen in the history of our state. And yet that's coming at the exact same time when we have shorter baseload power generation than we've ever had because of the political war on natural gas and coal, which are, of course, the two major inputs to baseload power generation. So I just want people to understand this and internalize this right now. If we do nothing about that, if we just stay on the current status quo course, we are headed towards rotating power outages in the state of Ohio in the next 5 years and a sharp rise in the electricity costs and the electric bills that you're paying. I don't think people are aware of that. I don't think
How
people are
much
aware
will
of that.
President Trump, I apologize, how much will
Yeah.
President Trump's recent EO on coal,
Yeah.
revitalizing the coal industry? He made a big deal about it, had
Yes.
everybody there, and it's extraordinarily important. Reversing the fossil fuel war that Joe Biden started actually in 2021. How much will that help Ohio?
I think it's a big deal. I think it's going to help Ohio. If I have some time, I'm going to even write up a little piece on it. It was a core issue for me, even when I ran for office last time around, is that I've often said coal should not be treated like a 4-letter word. It's one of our strongest inputs to baseload power generation. Frankly, the rest of the world in 2024 burned more coal than they ever have in world history, while the US burned less coal than we've ever had in our history, all in the name of staving off global climate change, which makes absolutely zero sense if you think about it. Now, the reality is, the sad reality, Bob, is unfortunately when many coal plants are shut down, it's really hard to bring them back. It's sort of a one-time, almost permanent decision. And it hurts me to have watched the closure of many coal plants in and around Ohio. But the ones that continue to exist, I think President Trump's executive order is going to be hugely helpful for. We got to make sure that we're harnessing every form of energy, coal, natural gas, and in the medium to long run, small modular nuclear reactors are an important part of the future of our state as well. You and I, we can have a little real talk here, right? So I think part of
Absolutely.
what happened in our state, okay, this is my diagnosis of it. I'm coming in as an outsider here with a fresh perspective. I want to be humble because I wasn't around for the last 20 years of Ohio politics, but here's what I see, and I'm a detail guy. We had a lot of smart people in our state. I really believe that, but in our leadership, but no one's talking about this issue. Why? What's been the barrier? And I think part of this goes back to a little bit of a cultural history where you're familiar with, some of the issues, let's just say around, some of the first energy and some of the political scandals around energy. I think the idea of energy abundance in Ohio just became a politically radioactive topic about 7, 8 years ago, where people just decided I'm really uncomfortable talking about that subject because there was some ugly stuff that went down and I don't want to be associated with it. So I'm just going to focus on a different topic. In the political culture of our state, I don't think that's too much of an oversimplification. I think that's what happened. And it's not about blaming anybody, but I just think that's part of the political history of our state. That's what
I think
happened.
you're right.
And then because of that, they said, okay, well, I don't want to be associated with that, or maybe, I don't want to be seen, or maybe there was some association that somebody did or didn't have peripherally that just said, I'm pulling back and that's just not an issue I'm focusing on. I'm just pretending that problem doesn't exist. The problem is what happened is in over those 8 years, now we're looking at an AI data center boom where people don't want to touch the energy issue. They freeze up. It's like they also become paralyzed, paralysis through nervousness of association with some first energy scandal some 8 years ago. They've refused to touch the issue. It's become sort of a radioactive topic. And I think that's my diagnosis of why otherwise we're in the surprising path where Ohio could be on our path to rotating power outages. But there's an opportunity now, right, to just turn the page on that past. I wasn't here for that. Frankly, I could care less about the tug of war of some other, scandals of the past. I wasn't here for it. It doesn't matter. It's in the past. Let's move to the future. Energy abundance in Ohio. I want to lead a revolution of energy dominance, manufacturing dominance, AI dominance, a revival of the American dream in this state, a revival of educational achievement, which you and I didn't get to talk about today, but maybe we can talk about another time.
Absolutely.
That's where I want to lead us. And I do think now's a moment for a leader from the next generation to take us there.
I love that you are turning that page, but addressing something in the future nobody else wants to talk about. And you're right. I believe you when you say you want to hit the ground running as a state because you've done it as a candidate already. You are out there full force and visiting counties and putting out ads, and it's really refreshing to see. Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for your time. I certainly appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you further during the campaign.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Bob.
Thank you, sir. So that's Vivek Ramaswamy. He wants to be governor. He is very ambitious. He is very aspirational and very maybe idealistic. And I am excited about all of those things. And we're going to talk about it a lot here on Strictly Speaking, both on the radio side, by the way, and here on Strictly Speaking, our podcast. If you found value in Vivek Ramaswamy and what he had to say, I'm asking you to share this with somebody else in your contact list and make sure that you subscribe to Strictly Speaking with Bob Frantz on Rumble, on YouTube, and on Spotify so you can make sure you get all of this great content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Strictly Speaking.